In today's video, we are going to be once again debunking the idea of sola scriptura. Aaron Cortez, Orthodox Christian. Goodness gracious, guys, I do genuinely apologize. My throat is a little bit clogged and my nose is as well. I've been feeling a little bit under the weather, but Christos Anesti. Therefore, we must celebrate, and we're going to get back into work during Bright Week by the help and mercy of Christ Jesus. So, one subscription equals one prayer for Aaron's health. Without further ado, let's dive straight into this video.
Mocking prophet.
Hey Jay, you had a posting recently on X with a couple of number of church fathers canon lists, and noticed that you circled first and second Esdras on a few of them, Athanasius being one of them. Just wondering, isn't that Ezra and Nehemiah?
Correct.
Okay, I thought it looked like you were circling it as if to show that it's not one of the canonical.
No, it's canonical because it's titled differently, but I was circling for my own personal notes at the time. I read that book when I was Protestant, right? So that's my notes from 20 years ago.
Okay.
23 years ago.
Got it. So, okay, just on that point then, like how do you as an Orthodox, I'm a Protestant, so how do you as an Orthodox understand the canon list, especially with like Athanasius being really, much closer to a Protestant canon, and not just Athanasius, you got the other Eastern fathers as well, pretty early ones that are closer to a Protestant canon.
No, they're not. I don't even know, what are you even talking about?
Well, I mean, the list that you had there of Athanasius, for example, I don't have it in front of me, but it doesn't have the Maccabees on there. He doesn't list Tobit, just a bunch of them. Like, it's a closer canon list to Protestantism than it is to.
So again, did you not hear like the first hour today?
No, I didn't.
Okay, it's fine. Let me scroll back to it. So individual church fathers lists are just one way of demonstrating variation and debate about the Old Testament canon. Okay, Athanasius specifically says that the deuterocanonical texts are the best for catechumens to read. So the fact that he says that it's for catechumens means that it does teach theology and doctrine, because this is what you're teaching the new people in the church, right? So he doesn't, just because something's a deuterocanon does not mean it's not inspired or not canon. It means that it's specifically its own canon. Purpose for catechesis, and it doesn't have the same import as the rest of the text. But that does not mean that it's not canonical, nor does that mean it's not inspired. And what I argued was, if you go to the example of the canons of the apostles, the apostolic canons, which is early church law, you familiar with that?
No, not that one.
Okay, can you pull up apostolic canons on your phone? Are you online right now or not?
Just on my phone.
Okay, so canon 85 of the apostles, this is the normative church law in the East, right, in the 300s.
Let me know down below too in the comment section if you guys use X. I never really saw the appeal of Twitter or X. I never did. I don't know. It's way too many things happening all at once. I really don't consume it, but I don't know. A lot of the apologists that I really do like and admire are on X, so I don't know if I should hop on X, but let's keep going.
And it lists the deuterocanonical books as the Bible. So the normative canon beyond just one church father, Athanasius, in canon 85 of the apostles, does include, it's called the apostolic canons. It does include the deuterocanonical text. It does not even specify that they're a separate second group. It just says they're the Old Testament. Contemporary with this, a few years after, if let's say this is 300s, maybe it's 350, because it's between 300 to 400. Not too long after that, you have the Council of Rome that Augustine agrees to, that Pope Damasus affirms, which does include the deuterocanonical texts as the canon. And at the same time, the councils of Carthage affirm the deuterocanonical texts. And for the Orthodox Church, by the time of Trullo and the Seventh Ecumenical Council, it affirms the canons of Carthage. So the East and the West, by the time of Trullo and the Seventh Ecumenical Council, all agree universally that the Deuterocanon is part of the Bible.
It's so interesting too that you get to find out that it took a very, very long time for the Bible to be canonized and for it to be compiled in its fullest. So if it took 6-7 centuries for the church to even compile the Bible, one must really, really take into account that if we're going by the definition of sola scriptura, meaning the Bible alone is the only infallible authority of the Christian faith, then what was an infallible a rule of faith to dogmatically delineate what is and isn't a Christian in those 500 years before the 6th and 7th century.
The text that, hold on, last thing. The Protestant, the list that I have, Melito Sardis does not have, it's not the Protestant canon. In fact, we showed that earlier because Melito's list includes wisdom, so this is not actually accurate. Athanasius' canon has Baruch in it. Baruch is not in the Protestant Bible, so that's not going to help you.
Yeah. So a couple things here. One is, maybe I'll go forward and then go to the latter. So Trullo is. So how do you is Trullo where you get your the main list of canon for your
Trullo
text?
affirms Carthage, and the Seventh Ecumenical Council affirms Trullo and Carthage.
Yeah. So okay. Saint John of Damascus, he doesn't. He's after Trullo, and he doesn't have this. So what? But why wouldn't he affirm Trullo?
Because he's writing at the time of the Seventh Ecumenical Council. He's one of the theologians his theology is used at the Seventh Ecumenical Council, and the Orthodox view does not have a rigid notion of this. We have flexibility, because even as late as John Damascus, as you're pointing out, he probably thought that the canons of the apostles is the right canon, because canons of the apostles includes Clement. So most likely John Damascus thought that canon 85 was the right canon, and that's why he listed as he does.
Okay, so if I go to your other point there, why do these guys, even Cyril of Jerusalem, Cyril of Jerusalem, Athanasius, I think one of the Cappadocians that actually list the canons, they don't have these books that you have. And
hold on, what are you talking about?
Like, they don't list, like for Cyril of Jerusalem, he actually says that he doesn't list the Deuterocanonicals. He says don't even read them, and he says that
no, he doesn't.
He says that they're handed down by the apostles, the list that he has.
Where does he say not to read the Deuterocanonical text? I've read the Catechetical Lectures. So where are you getting that?
I can pull it up right now, but
So, I mean, in the list that Lee McDonald has, Cyril of Jerusalem also has Baruch. And as I pointed out, when Athanasius talks about these texts, he says the wisdom text of Wisdom of Solomon and Sirach, he says those are great for catechumens to read. So again, the fact that they're not listed in that list does not mean that for the Orthodox Church they're not part of the canon. You're just assuming that canon must be read in the Protestant sense. Like, we don't have a problem with flexibility on this because we believe in tradition.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I mean, okay, so so your point about Athanasius listing a Deuterocanonical book, like Baruch, I think the Protestant claim is more that these canons are closer to the Protestant canon, not that
they're not, though. That's the thing, is that it's not. So now it's moving the goalpost. So now it's closer, right? So it's not the Protestant canon.
So that's been my point from the beginning. I always said the Protestant canon is closer to what these guys are claiming than what you guys are.
Yeah, but again, you're missing the point, which is ironic, because the more broad accepted canon beyond just individual church fathers is the Deuterocanonical text in the East on the basis of the apostolic canons, canon 85. That's church law, which was more widespread and normative than just what Athanasius thought.
But I mean,
church councils trump and supersede the authority of one or a few church fathers. Whatever the council decides, whatever the church decides, that supersedes and trumps whatever canon that an individual or any church father does have in their canon.
I mean, why wouldn't?
Because they didn't believe in sola scriptura, man. That's why. Because they weren't thinking that the church follows one written authority as its final authority. They can have different canons because it's not a religion based around the book. That's the point.
Okay, so Cyril's catechetical lectures here. He says that. Oh man, I don't know if you have it there, but he says he lists the canon. He says these are the ones that have been handed down by the apostles, or that were handed down to us. He says there's a 22 book canon, so aligned to the Jewish counting, not necessarily identical.
Yeah, this is not going to help you. What's his New Testament canon?
It doesn't have Revelation.
His New Testament canon is 7 Catholic epistles: James, Peter, John, Jude, the epistles of Paul.
Yep. You notice anything missing?
Revelation.
Probably Revelation.
Correct. So how's that going to help you? Why are we supposed to follow him?
Well, no, I'm not saying that we need to follow any one person.
Oh, well, now we move the goalpost, right? So now it's not any of them. Who is it?
No, I think that the canon does come through tradition. I'm not denying that as a Protestant. What I argue as a Protestant is that I think that the church fathers we're trying to get to a 22 canon. I really think that the 22 book is something that was handed down to them, and it's consistent.
On what basis are you just asserting this?
Because they all say that. Like,
no, they don't. No, they don't. Cyril, he doesn't have the book of Revelation. What are you talking about?
No, I'm talking about the Old Testament canon.
So that's what
the question is, how do you know the epistemic principle that you're saying is the right way to go about deciding? Is it all the church fathers? This church father? Many of them? How do you know? You're just asserting these things. Oh, it's the 22.
We're trying to get to the debate is over the Old Testament canon, not necessarily the new one.
No, it's not. This is false. It's both of them, because the way that you know both of them is the same means, tradition. That's why. That's how.
That's one means, and I agree with
that. No,
that.
it's the only means. How do you know Matthew wrote Matthew?
Well, there's
I believe it was the Diocese of Alexandria that really that kept the epistles of the Apostle Matthew, and that really kept the tradition of, this was given to us by Matthew. And if we're genuinely debating the canon of Scripture, you cannot get to any point whatsoever before you even get to the infallibility of the church. Because if the church was fallible in keeping the tradition of keeping Matthew being the author of the of the book of Matthew, then how do you know that Matthew wrote Matthew? You can just square away with all of the gospels, because the gospels don't have autograph, or they didn't write their authorship.
There's a couple of ways that you could go about that. Tradition is super helpful
Meaning you have to rely on the church to give you the author of the book.
for that Matthew wrote Matthew. But we also have, it dates to the 1st century. It doesn't date to the 2nd or 3rd century.
So a lot of forgeries date to, and pseudographa date early. So what?
Yeah, but none of them date to the 1st century. That I'm
Well,
aware of.
how do you know that that's a criteria? You're just asserting those things as principles. Are they are those self-evident principles?
No, but nobody
So how do you
claims
know?
that the Gospel of Thomas,
Yes,
for example,
how do
is
you
probably
know?
the earliest gospel. Dates
How do you know that because it's old, it's therefore part of the canon? That's what you're asserting these things as if they're self-evident. How? Like, on what basis? These are assertions.
You asked me how do I know that Matthew wrote Matthew, and one of them is that, well, obviously.
No,
Matthew
I said that, but I'm making the point that tradition is necessary, and you conceded that, and then you said there's other means too, like it's old. Well, how does it being old tell you that it's canonical? That's an assumption, because there's fake documents that are old too.
It's also a fallacy that I don't remember the specific name of the fallacy. I'll Google it in a bit, but it's a fallacy just because it dates older. That means it's more reliable, or that it's more valid. It just means that it's a closer evidence, but it doesn't prove authenticity.
Sure, there's fake documents that are old, but if any fake documents is written to be written by an apostle, but it's not in the 1st century.
How do we know that your list of these principles is the right list that we're supposed to all follow? This is the point. This is Protestant self-popery. You're the new pope that's going to tell us the list. Oh, you see, I've derived that the church fathers wanted a 22-book Old Testament canon, even though the majority of them don't have that, because I just gave you church law, which was more widespread than individual guys. And then you're saying, well, who cares what individual guys said? It's not this guy or that guy or that guy.
I'm not saying who cares individual. I think it's important. I think that Athanasius, these church fathers, also operated under this principle. Like,
okay, how do you know the principle's true? Where are you getting it from?
Reddit says it's called the Golden Age fallacy.
well, we want to know who the apostles were who wrote those texts. And we get it from tradition.
I thought we were talking about the Deuterocanon. You said it's 22 books. How do we know?
Oh yeah, the Old Testament books. Yeah, okay. So there's a number of arguments for an Old Testament canon. One
No. You gave a principle that we want to do this. What is the basis for your assertion that that's what we're supposed to follow? How do you know that?
That's what the church fathers
Who?
said.
Where?
We received these 20
That's begging the question, because I'm giving you countless church fathers that contend with that. Who's right? Oh, because the church fathers said it.
Well, there's other arguments as well. For example, I'll give you, there's many arguments. There's just one additional.
What's the argument for that principle of the books that it's these books, this number? What's the argument for that that's not circular? How do you know?
The argument is this. We want to know the canon, the Old Testament canon that Jesus and the apostles used. How do we get to that?
Well, did you know that the Deuterocanonical books, the Septuagint includes the Deuterocanon?
Yes, I'm aware of that.
Okay, did the apostles cite the Deuterocanonical text?
Yes.
They did.
They cite the Septuagint. They cite the Septuagint. I'm not aware that they cite the
You don't even know the New Testament references to the Deuterocanonical text?
Not explicitly.
No, there's many explicit ones.
Yeah, no.
But what's the basis for your assertion of your axiom? How do you know that that's the case?
And how do you know? And what's your justification for being like, no, that's not a citation of the Deuterocanon? Like, how do you know that?
So one additional.
Because the presupposition that the debater is arguing against is the New Testament doesn't quote the Deuterocanon, therefore it is not canonical. But the Deuterocanon is cited in numerous texts in the New Testament. And if you're saying, and if we link, right, certain things, what is your justification for being like, oh, I reject this, when the church itself accepts it? And you're just going to be like, oh, well, what's your justification? The church. Let's keep going.
Argument which I was going to say is, if we want to know what Jesus and the apostles believed was canon, there's some internal evidence in the New Testament. So, for example,
that has not. You understand the question is prior to you citing the New Testament. I want to know the basis for what the list of the Old and New Testament books are. You're saying let's go to the New Testament books. We don't know that they're canon yet. This is a prior question.
You want to talk about the 22 books.
Either one, dude, because it's the same principle for us as to an authority post apostles to determine and compile a binding decision, loosing and binding upon the church. The first 1,000 years of Christianity has Orthodox church fathers doing that and councils doing that. You're telling me that's all wrong. Listen to me, Mr. Protestant man.
Well, no, I believe I'm operating under the same principles as Athanasius and these guys.
Why are we supposed to follow Athanasius? Because there's other church fathers that disagree with Athanasius, and Athanasius says Athanasius says catechumens should be catechized with the Deuterocanon. Do you believe that?
I think Athanasius says the Deuterocanons cannot be used for doctrine, laying down doctrine.
No, he doesn't. He says so. He wants
I'm almost certain he says that.
He says catechumens should be catechized with the Deuterocanonical text like Wisdom and Sirach. And you're telling me that, but you shouldn't learn doctrine from them. Catechumens are learning doctrine.
No, he says you can't establish doctrine. Yeah, you can read it and learn from it. There's a lot of books you can read and learn from it. I think the Deuterocanon.
Why are we supposed to follow Athanasius and not Augustine?
Well, because you can follow either anyone you want.
Oh, we can follow anyone we want. Exactly. And that's why Protestant. All right, we're done. So you can follow anyone you want. I'm glad you think it's funny. So thanks for wasting my
No,
time
sorry,
with all
can I
this.
just, I
Yeah,
just
go
have one
ahead.
question for you. One more question for you.
Why are we supposed to follow Athanasius over Augustine's canon?
We're supposed to try and get to the oldest canon possible.
Says who? You just keep asserting. How do you know that? So now it's the oldest. That's a fallacy.
That criteria that he just asserted is an assertion. You're just giving that, like, what's your justification for saying that it should be the oldest? Like, who says so?
Yeah, we're trying to get to the 22 canon tradition.
How do you know that it's that?
How do
you
you
just keep
know-
asserting
yeah.
because it's 22. Because it's 22.
Church fathers have referenced
Who?
that this has been passed down.
Who?
Cyril of Jerusalem.
Cyril doesn't help your case. He doesn't have your canon. He's a bishop. How does he help your case?
No, Cyril
He's a bishop out here.
explicitly says 22 books.
So what? Why are we? You're just.
Why are
you
we
don't understand.
supposed
You
to
keep
follow?
arbitrarily saying this father, no this father, no this father. On what basis is that right? Because it's old. That's a fallacy.
So I believe it's right based on
I believe
the multiple traditions from.
Now it's multiple traditions, and how do you know which ones are right? What's your epistemic basis?
Epistemic basis is that all the church fathers seem to agree.
All of them. No, they don't. Now you're lying because get out of here. All of them agree. Come on.
All right, basically, that's the end of the video. Very, very entertaining from Jay Dyer once again. Please subscribe to this YouTube channel if you want to learn more about Jesus Christ's true church, orthodoxy. That being said, please also pray for me. My nose has been runny. My throat has been clogged. I've been feeling under the weather, but I still had to go to the gym today because I can't be a little soy boy. Okay, I can't be a little soy boy. I have to be a man. Pay bills, and do the work because that is what is necessary in today's day and age. That being said, please genuinely follow me on my Instagram. Link is going to be in the description down below. 1 follow and 1 subscribe equals 1 prayer for my health. Thank you guys so much for watching. Subscribe once again to this YouTube channel. And as always, Jesus loves you.